Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to talk about film. It's part of our DNA at this point, something we love to do so much, and we love doing it with you. Now, whether you're listening live or commenting in the comments, we love the discussion. So climb on board because we got a big show for you this week. We are going to be handing out the Movie Bears Podcast Awards, superlative trophies. The Oscars and the other awards don't always give the most love to the films that we think love should go to. So it's kind of our way of having a little fun and giving out our own trophies. Listeners have also submitted comments over the last couple weeks with their own nominations for awards. So we're excited to share some of those comments as well. But before we can get into any of that, I need to introduce my wonderful co-hosts. Jim Pugliafico is here with us. Hey, sweetheart.
I am
How
here.
you doing?
Hi. I'm good. I'm doing good. We sometimes on these nights, podcast nights, this is our chance to say hello to each other as we get in the door. But I'm really looking forward to this show because I know we heard from a lot of friends who contribute to the show. Definitely one of my favorites of the year. So I'm good. I'm excited. Can't wait to get into all these picks. It's going to be great.
Mm-hmm. So many, just great conversations about to happen. I'm excited too, babe. And no conversation would be completely complete without Will Lindes, who is also here. Hey, Will, how are you?
Hey, Brad. Hey, Jim. Oh,
Hello.
my gosh. I'm excited for this one. I know we've said it on the show before that I think my two favorite episodes of the year kind of come back to back, and that's our top 10 show and our MBP Awards because it's such a catch-all of love and praise for so many different films from so many different points of view and perspectives. So, and that doesn't just extend to the two of you. Like, coming into this, I thought, like, okay, I kind of think I know what some of the ones Brad and Jim are going to pick. You know, maybe there's some surprises, but we had just an absolute outpouring of love from listeners who submitted their picks. And some of those picks, like, surprised me. Some of them invigorated me, and some of them actually turned me on to some films that weren't even on my radar. And for that, I thank you.
Always good when you can be introduced to maybe some films that hadn't quite, made it onto your radar, so to speak. Definitely a good thing. And yeah, jazzed to jump into the conversation. We've got quite a few folks who are with us live on the show right now in the live chat. Feel free to say hello in that chat, folks. We'll keep up with it as best we can throughout the evening here. Kevin Ryan is with us. Hey, Kevin, good to see you. He says, hey, guys. Jordan Riley says, yay, my favorite Bear podcast. Jordan, we haven't seen you in a hot minute. Hope you're doing well. Good to hear from you. And Hamstrack says, howdy, y'all. I have to bounce any second, but I wanted to get as much MBP as I can until then. Welcome, Hammy. Glad to have you with us. And Bruce is here, too. Hey, Bruce. It's like a family reunion on the show this week. I'm a fan.
We rolled out the red carpet. Everyone showed up in their tuxes, dressed to the nine. I think I saw Billy Porter over there, and he looks absolutely stunning. Like, this is the place to be tonight.
David Harbour's
Yeah.
in our bedroom right now, hanging out. I put a sign up that said green room, so he's just chilling there. I hope he doesn't figure out that it's all a ruse.
Brad's not lying. I just saw him walk by on the behind Brad's camera, and oh my gosh, there you go! Wow,
It's the green room with the big sign on the door. Says, no shirts allowed.
Oh, David Harbour shirtless. Anyway, all right. So we got lots to talk about, lots to chat about. We're going to go ahead and jump right in. And to kick things off a little bit, Jim, Will, I just wanted to kind of pick your brains for a hot minute because the MBP Awards, Oscars, take them for what you will. Golden Globes, take them for what you will. Whatever. But this is kind of our moment, right, to just give some love from our show. Have our listeners give some love. I'm curious, Jim, Will, how did you guys approach coming up with some of your picks? I mean, did you pick mainly like Oscar super critical noteworthy films? What was your deal?
Well, I mean, it was tough for me. This list is almost as hard to put together for me as kind of like my top 10. I don't approach it the same way. This is where I realize that I probably should have done homework all through the year. Like I probably should have been taking notes on movies like, oh, this scene right here is a candidate for our, hottest scene, or this is like this could be it for tearjerker of the year. And of course, I didn't do any of that, right? So here I am at the end of the year looking through the list of movies that I watched, and Will, I know my list is pretty big. Yours has to be even way bigger, and trying to remember like if there was something that stood out in the movie that could fit into one of these categories. That's basically how I did it. I just category by category I went and I looked at the list of films, and I'm like tried to remember something that jumped out at me from this list of hundreds of titles that fit in the category. So that's how I approached it. I didn't give any more weight to like, movies that are in my top 10 or, big budget movies versus small movies. Just whatever made the most impact for me and fit the best in the category. That's all I did.
I mean, these are very personal picks, right? Like, I think that this whole award ceremony to begin with is sort of a counter argument to the other award ceremonies, the big ones that happen. Even in the way that we chose the categories that we chose, we don't have best actor, best director, best animated film. We've seen those, and those discussions can be had elsewhere. And so because this is such a personal set of categories, all of my picks were very personal as well. I think there are some of these films that have a chance at some of the ones I picked. Some of them might have a chance at getting awards. Some of them I really hope will be getting some Oscars. And some of them were absolutely snubbed or not even on the radar. And that's okay, because these are our awards. These aren't anyone else's. Mm-hmm. And by ours, I mean the three of us and all of our listeners out there in listener land.
Yeah. What about you, Brad? How'd you approach it?
Yeah, I would say it's very similar to you guys, maybe somewhere in between. Jim, you kind of mentioned you were like, I guess, kind of cribbing at the last second a little bit with some of these. Will, I know you. I don't know. Will, whenever I think of you watching movies and making notes, I see Tom Cruise in Minority Report with like the virtual screens in front of him. And, for me,
didn't we just see that in a movie?
You're not wrong.
Didn't that just happen in I think so. Underwater?
I think yeah. But for me, I have a notepad on my phone, a notepad file, and I have these categories down. And if I see a movie that I think might be a contender, I will list it in that section. And then, Jim, I kind of take a note out of your book, and at the end, just before we do the show, I go back and look at the ones I called out. And whichever pick in the category just stands out to me and resonates the most in my mind at the time, I'm like, it's been 10 months since I saw that movie. It must have really been an impression if that's what my gut says. So they are purposefully noted and gutfully chosen. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
okay. All right.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think that it takes a combination of the kind of like the think through it with your brain, but then kind of like make the decision with your gut and your heart.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Like take a category like biggest tearjerker scene or movie, right? How hard would it be for me to watch as I'm watching movies in the year? Like every movie I actually cried in, just listing that movie. And then at the end of the year, I might have a handful of those to pick from for the best one in this category, right? I mean, that's not, you think in hindsight, it doesn't sound hard, but when you don't do it, now you're stuck. And then you're trying to remember, did I cry in this movie? Was that a sad scene? I don't remember so that's kind of the position I'm in.
I totally get it. Absolutely. Well, I'm sure those of you out in listener land, whether you're listening on digital tape delay through Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or you're with us live right now, a lot of folks had a chance to send in their choices as well. Feel free to tell us a little bit about your thought process in the chat or the comments. Very curious how you came up with your picks. We'll also be sharing some of those picks as we go through and give ours. We'll be going through some listener comments as well. So if you submitted something, chances are pretty good you might hear your name pop up somewhere. But hang out with us on the show. Here we go. Guys, let's get this party started with our first category, which was biggest shocker. And by that, we mean a movie that shouldn't have been good and yet somehow was.
Not the sexual technique.
No. Not the who has the biggest hand to make the shocker, but
that's a different category.
That's a different.
It's probably a different podcast. But Jim, what did you pick for biggest shocker?
Oh, I get to go first. That's right. Oh boy, the biggest shocker for me was a movie only because I mean there was a lot of movies that surprised me this year, but this one had all the trappings of what should be a terrible, terrible movie, and but the movie kind of subverted all those bad expectations, and I really had a fun time with this movie. Is it a great, an all-time movie? Probably not, but the movie was Crawl. This was the movie about, it was kind of a environmental, a storm disaster movie combined with, animals gone crazy. In this case, alligators, or were they crocodiles? I forget what they were. But anyway, Crawl was a lot of fun. And it really kind of floored me how much fun I had with a movie that really could have been very, very terrible.
Man. I'm thinking back to watching that movie, Jim, and you're absolutely right. The trailers, I don't know. I was not looking forward to seeing Crawl. But, like, coming out of it, I was like, I mean, as, like, Crocodile Alligator movies go, that was pretty good. It was like a mix of A Quiet Place and Don't Breathe, kind of, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those ones I seem to remember we were sort of talking about this one before we saw it, because we always, peek behind the curtain, we stay on at the end of our show and we sort of like say, well, what are we going to talk about next week? What's on the agenda? And I think when this one came up, I think your exact words, Brad, were something like, oh God, that movie. Yeah. And then when we came in and you were like into it, and that was like really exciting. Yeah. I think it's a really good pick.
I mean, like, it definitely had all the trappings of a bad movie, and it hit all the beats you expected it to, but it just did it so well, and didn't cross the line of taking itself too seriously or being too comedic. I thought it worked really well. Hamstrak says, and I didn't know this, that it's on Tarantino's list of his favorite movies of the year. So
yep,
there you go. So me and T-Man.
You and QT got it going on.
All right, excellent. Well, great pick, babe. Will, how about for you? What was your biggest shocker?
I feel like I have a really interesting love-hate relationship with the horror genre as a whole. When horror works, it's my absolute favorite genre. It's where my happy places. It's where I like to settle in, like on a late night. Like it's where I'm most challenged and most innervated. But there's so much bad that you have to wade through to get to the good sometimes that it can sometimes be disheartening. And I think because of that, I was so refreshed and excited when I saw Ready or Not. The film starring Samara Weaving as a woman on her wedding night who is basically subjected to a game of hide and seek with her as the live bait with her new in-laws. And the whole movie is exciting and fresh, familiar, but it also like brings new things to the table. And I'd seen Samara Weaving in things before. She was in Netflix's The Babysitter or something like that, like a year or 2 years ago. And I took notice of her there, but Ready or Not was a star-making role. Like, I've taken notice, and I'm now in the whatever Samara Weaving is in from here on out. I'll go check it out. Like, that's where I'm at. Ready or Not is what I want out of the horror genre, the thriller genre, kind of whatever you want to call it. And it surprised me, and I love that type of surprise.
This was my the one that got knocked out by Crawl in my for
One
this
A, one
category.
B.
So I was really happy to see it pop up in your column there.
Yeah, definitely a great pick, Will. That was another one of those where I was just like, do we really have to watch this movie? The things we do for this podcast. And then it was like, hey, that was, fairly decent. Definitely solid for sure.
What shocked you, Brad? What shocked you?
Oh, my biggest shocker. I was going to go with Long Shot, just full transparency. Charlize Theron, Seth Rogen. I was like, what the fuck is this going to be?
That would have been a great
And
pick
it was
too.
amazing. And we may hear more about Long Shot in a second, but that actually made my list for my top films of 2019. So I was like, well, I'm going to pick another one that I haven't really talked about. And that movie is Ma. Love of Octavia Spencer aside, who I do adore, Ma looked fucking terrible in the trailers. Group of kids basically team up with, an older lady who buys booze for them, who gives them a place to party, and then people start dying. It looked so shitty. And the trailer annoyed the piss out of me because there's like this part where Octavia Spencer's like, don't make me drink alone. And like it would get in my head. I couldn't get it out. So when it came time to see this movie, I was just like, oh, no, I don't want to see this movie. We went to see it anyway. And I really enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. I'm used to seeing Octavia Spencer in some pretty meaty, like serious roles with, light comedic elements. Fuck if she does not make a great scary villain. I tell you what. This movie also came in second for my hottest on-screen moment due to a scene that happens. There's a naked man strapped to a bed. My love of restraining naked men to beds, I guess, came into play. Maybe. But I mean, this was just such a thrill ride for me, and I didn't think that it would be. So, yeah.
That's a really good pick, and I'm with you. Like when I saw the trailer, I'm like, did Octavia Spencer's agent agree to this film before she had a chance to look at the script or something? Like, how did she end up in this movie? And when we watched it, I mean, we had a really good time with it. It definitely took some unexpected turns, and I like that about these movies. And did you notice that like all three of our movies that were biggest shocker are horror movies? That's interesting.
Absolutely.
I just realized that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Yep. Huh. Yeah, that's crazy. So, that's the little genre movie lover in all of us, I guess.
Octavia Spencer is one of those people who I love that she gets more and more into these like genre films. Because I think that low key, she has a love for like doing those types of films. And that just hasn't been like the full arc of her career. I remember we saw a film. I think, Jim, you saw it with me. Maybe not. Small Town Crime. It came out in 2017.
Yes.
And it's just a little. It's a John Hawkes movie, she was like the producer on it, and she was like, I've known John Hawkes for a while, and I've been wanting to make a genre-ish film with John Hawkes, so let's figure out a way to do that. And so she spearheaded getting this thing going because that was her passion. And that plus Ma, I want to see more of this side of Octavia's career.
Indeed, and you're not the only one, Will. Hamstracked in the chat says, Octavia Spencer isn't a typical leading actor. It's good to see her shine. And absolutely agree. In fact, I hope Octavia gets a whole lot more of these leading roles because I think she can carry it. Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of listeners, we had some listener responses. People sent in their choices for this particular award category. And as horror films go, one came up. Hamstracked and... Oh, no, I misread that. I'm sorry. It was actually Bruce Perky and Bill Harris from the Green Screen of Death mentioned Dr. Sleep, another horror movie starring Ewan McGregor, sequel to The Shining. And then Hamstracked and Jake Carson submitted Long Shot. I told you it might come up as their biggest shocker of the year. So glad to see I wasn't the only one who was blown away by Long Shot.
Super solid films. Mm-hmm. Good pick, guys.
Longshot would have been in the running for me, even if I didn't get the jacket. You know what I mean? Because that film, again, you see Seth Rogen in a movie, you're like, oh boy, this could go really bad. This could be the typical Seth Rogen thing. But they really did some cool things with his talent and fit him into a character that you actually cared about. So similar to a movie, if you remember, 50-50 from a few years ago, kind of did the same thing. And I really like that one too.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, we're moving on to our second category of the show. This is Best Surprise Performance. Acting that came out of nowhere. Maybe it's an unknown actor. Maybe it's someone we're already very familiar with, but just turning in a performance maybe we never would have expected from that actor. Jim, what was your pick in this category?
My pick was a performance that maybe others were not surprised by this performance, but I hadn't seen, I guess, a lot of weighty performances by this actor before. And this was J-Lo in Hustlers. She basically took that movie on her shoulders and ran with it. And I was floored by her performance. I don't pay much attention to the Oscar stuff. I don't know if she got nominated this year or not, or she got passed over, but the performance she gave in that movie, I thought was worthy of all the accolades she got. I thought I had not really seen her do anything like that before, so that's why it was a big surprise to me. And this was a dramatic movie. This wasn't like where she was the, very attractive, side character. She was the character of the movie. Didn't rely on her beauty, which she definitely has a ton of, or like even her singing and stuff. But like she actually got into the character. We cared about the character. So yeah, J-Lo in Hustlers is my pick here, hands down.
Yeah, and it's solid as picks go here, Jim. I'm used to seeing J-Lo as like a judge on singing competitions at this point. It's kind of been a hot minute since she's been like, I don't know, just in the spotlight like this. So, going into this film, I'm kind of like J-Lo in a movie. Like, is this Anaconda 3, like Hustlers? I don't know. But she was fantastic in that film. I had some issues with the movie as a whole, but she really was not one of them. I thought she was great.
Her last good movie was in 1998. It's been 22. That was the Soderbergh's Out of Sight. 22 years since she's done something like solid on screen, and here she just kind of comes out of nowhere and blows it out of the water. This was a great comeback year for J-Lo between this, her new album, and the Super Bowl. Like, kudos to J-Lo.
Did not see the Super Bowl. All I did was see tweets about it. That was it. But I prefer to keep her memory from this year in the realm of her great performance in Hustlers.
There you go.
But do watch the halftime show, because that's also a great performance.
Did you say but?
But.
Do you watch the halftime show?
But.
Okay, but.
Big Tom just sent a message to me. He said, "What? You didn't love J-Lo in Made in Manhattan?" Actually, I did, but
Was that a Muppet movie?
No. But Made in Manhattan was like, was that 2001? My sophomore year of college? I mean, that was a long time ago. It's 2020, Tom. It's like I said, it's been a hot minute, but I did adore her in Made in Manhattan. She was really good.
And it's probably my fault for not my knowledge of Muppet movies is not very deep, so it's possible
Muppets
that I missed
Manhattan, not Made in Manhattan.
Although I would watch a J-Lo meets the Muppets movie. I'd like to see them just slack-jawed as she's dancing on a pole with like titty tassels.
Yeah.
It'd be crazy.
Oh boy.
Will, what was your pick in this category?
All right, so mine's probably not going to be a surprise, but I think if this was the year of Florence Pugh, she had sort of come onto my radar last year with one film, I guess last year, with 2018, with a film called Lady Macbeth. She was really good in it, but you didn't quite know if this is going to be like, is this a star-making role? Is this a fluke? Like, where is she? Like, what's the trajectory of her career? And then in 2019, she comes out with Fighting with My Family, which wasn't a stellar movie, but it was a good enough movie that she does an excellent job in. And then Midsummer, one of the best performances of the year, and a supporting role in Little Women, also one of the best performances of the year. Between those three roles, I think that this is definitely like a body of work selection for me, because Florence Pugh is not even someone that's like, oh, it's on my radar, I can't wait to see what's next. Like, she's catapulted into stardom now. She is at a spot where she can start getting more and more juicy roles, and I'm absolutely living for it. It's a shame that her performance in Midsummer was not nominated at some of the other awards, but we saw that with Toni Collette in Hereditary. We saw that with Lupita Nyong'o in Us. Awards bodies don't tend to like genre, but whatever. Yeah. I'm going to give her the award right now. My best performance or most surprising performance of the year, Florence Pugh.
Will.
Yeah, Will,
go ahead.
Go ahead,
No,
Brad.
go ahead.
I was just going to say that, she's had a great year, obviously. And I really loved her in her supporting role in Little Women, which we may hear more about later. I don't know. But and obviously she did put in some great work in Midsummer as well, which is a lot of people's favorite. But yeah, I definitely want to see more from her in the coming years, and I'm sure people are watching her filmography on IMDb for what's coming up next for her. Sorry, Brad, for stepping on you.
Black Widow is next for her.
No, it's it's okay.
Not getting excited for that.
I was just gonna ask Will, given your love of Florence Pugh, does that mean you worship her from the pews?
Listen, at this point, she is my May Queen. She sets this bear's heart on fire.
Oh, yeah. Goodness. All right. Great pick.
You thought he was going for Star Wars when he said pew pew pew.
Oh, that's a good one too. Nice. All right. Let's see. Best surprise performance for me. We actually talked about this on the show a while back, but that's okay. It can come up again. I gotta tell you, Renee Zellweger is not one of my favorite actors. I have not enjoyed her very much in pretty much anything she's ever done. I've found her really shrill and kind of annoying, and that scrunchy face she makes just drives me nuts in a bad way. But holy fuck, if she wasn't amazing in Judy. Man, just totally took me by surprise. She became Judy Garland. I forgot that I was watching Renee Zellweger. She even looked like Renee Zellweger. And, some of that's, makeup and, hair and all that good stuff. But I don't know, man. Like, she showed some acting chops I really hadn't seen from her before. Maybe I just hadn't been watching the right Renee Zellweger movies. I don't know. But she really, really took me by surprise. And I know Judy has gotten some critical acclaim. Big Tom says I'm such a homo. But I'll own that. I'll take that. I'm a friend of Dorothy. So, why not support Renee in a movie all about Judy Garland? So there you go. She really surprised me a lot.
Great pick, Brad.
You're about to be supported by the Academy, because I think that it would take like a tornado sweeping through the Oscars for her to not get a statue this coming Sunday.
You never know if the man behind the curtain pulls the wrong envelope or something. I mean, it could happen.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. It was a great performance, and it's unfortunate her name is what it is, because it doesn't go with Renaissance very well, like Zellweger Renaissance. Like, that doesn't really work, because this may lead to more great things from her. I'd like to see her.
Jim, you missed a really great opportunity.
What's that?
The Renaissance.
Renaissance.
That's really good.
I was setting you up.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah. I was
That
setting
play
it.
on words, I would say that was a Zoe winner.
It's called a softball.
Oh, goodness. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, great pick, Brad.
Yeah.
I like Renee Zellweger. I think she's gotten a really tough rap in the years leading up to this. Hopefully, this will be kind of a turnaround for her.
Yeah, she's my Judy. I mean, she is now. I'm kind of with you, Brad. Like, I had nothing against her. She's fine. She's had some fine movies, but I think that this was a really solid. I don't want to call it a star-making role because I mean she's
already a star.
She's sort of a critical darling, but it's definitely something that's made me appreciate her.
Okay. Yeah. So we have some other picks from our great friends who are listeners. We have from Kevin Ryan, friend of the show, Taron Egerton from Rocket Man. Kevin, that's a great pick too. I've liked Taron Egerton for a while though. He's done some good work in some other films. So I guess less of a surprise for me, but I think his performance in Rocket Man, and did he get nominated as well? I don't know if he did or not, but he was. I'll be upset if he's not, and maybe he's not. But Kevin says Taron is his pick, and just like Renee, he kind of became Elton John in that movie. A really tough role. I mean, the singing and the acting throughout all phases of Elton's life were great. It's one of my favorite movies of the year. So, and probably one of my favorite male performances of the year. However, not a huge surprise for me, as much for me. Yeah.
It's really a shame he didn't get nominated for this performance because he was fucking fantastic in it.
Oh, yeah, I don't get it.
Kevin says in the chat, I'd only seen him in the Kingsman movies and Sing, so definitely a big step up in his eyes. Yeah, Kevin, absolutely agree. Mm-hmm. I liked him in the Kingsman movies, but Rocket Man was a whole nother thing. So really, really great choice for sure. Mm-hmm. All right, gentlemen, moving on to our next category. This is going to be the movie most likely to get a rewatch. I tend to rewatch movies more than Will and Jim, I think, on the show. So that's
probably fair.
Yeah, this is always an interesting category for me because to hear a film that you guys would like sacrifice watching a new movie to watch again is kind of thrilling. So I'm anxious to get into this one. Jim, which movie is most likely to get a rewatch for you?
Well, being a huge Godzilla fan and there being a Godzilla movie, the big Godzilla movie that came out this year, Godzilla King of the Monsters would be the obvious choice. But I am going to kind of switch gears on you guys and say the one I'm probably most likely to go back and watch this year, other than Godzilla, which is kind of that's an automatic. All the Godzilla movies are going to get watched by me. But it's going to be Little Women, I think. That's a movie that I was a really pleasant surprise for me. There's so much goodness in that movie in terms of the performances and the story, and especially how the story was stitched together. I think almost demands a rewatch now that you know the cadence of the story. I think the screenplay could reveal a little bit more about the story, especially if you don't read the book like me. That I could get out of Little Women. So I think I'm going to be watching Little Women again.
It's a hell of a pick. I mean, I saw someone say the other day that it was like the Expendables for like up and coming, like amazing, like white actresses. And I love that idea because it's like this like Avengers team up of all of these people who are at this like start of their career, but at this particular point in their career where they're taking off. And I think it'll be fun to rewatch this one, not just like, in a month or in 2 months now, but like, imagine coming back to this one a decade from now when Florence Pugh and Saoirse Ronan and all of them are just like at this next peak of their career, so you can see that trajectory.
Yeah, and Saoirse Ronan we loved from Brooklyn. Remember we saw that one? Yeah. Brooklyn, she's great. The Harry Potter movies with help me out, actor's name. from here.
Which actor?
Which
The
one?
actor who played Hermione, right?
Oh, Emma Watson.
Oh, Emma Watson.
Emma
yeah.
Watson. Yeah. Sorry, I stumped.
No,
my
you're good. You're good.
But yeah, and like I said, this movie is told in a very interesting way in terms of the timeline. So that's probably the main reason, besides the performances, that I'd go back and watch it.
All right. Well, sounds like a pretty solid choice here. Will, how about for you?
This was a hard one for me, honestly, because usually this category is, to your point, Brad, like there's a lot of films that I'm chasing down and catching up with. So usually this category is something that is solid and effective, but is also something that I feel like I don't have to 100% invest myself in. It's like it's like a comfortable blanket, that type of film. Like last year, I picked Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. The year before that, I did Star Wars: Last Jedi, and the year before that, I did Green Room. All three of which movies I've rewatched in the last few months. So it's like, that's been true. But I didn't have that movie for me this year. But what I did have is a movie that just absolutely like blew me away from just the amount of like the two times I've seen it, like I keep finding new things and I'm interested in remining it. And that's Parasite, the Bong Joon-ho film about class in South Korea. And maybe it'll get an Oscar. Maybe it'll get a few Oscars. Maybe it won't. But for me, it's one that I can see myself coming back to regularly, especially whenever I've just had like a bad streak of movies, which happens, just to sort of remind myself, like, this is what this craft is capable of, and this is what I want out of my film watching experience.
Will, have you not already re-seen it?
I've seen it twice now.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, I think this is a movie that, that I did like, and I think that it's a very rich movie. I think there's a lot to reward a second viewing that you would pick up, and you might not have fully been absorbed in the first time through. There's a lot to it. It's very dense in terms of visuals and just character actions and stuff like that. So great pick, Will.
I haven't seen it yet, but I may have bought it on iTunes or rented it on iTunes. Yes. It's ready to watch. I just haven't started that 30-day or whatever day countdown it is yet. So I'm definitely jazzed to see it though. So Will, you picking this in this category definitely incentivizes me to see it earlier rather than later in that 30-day period.
And that's my biggest hell yeah moment.
There you go. James in the chat says, I've got to watch that one, hearing lots of good things. Definitely, a much beloved film, it seems. For me, my most likely to get a rewatch movie is one that we saw in movie theaters just after the first of the year, because we didn't have it here like around Christmas time, or if we did, maybe we were up at the cabin or something and we couldn't see it. I forget. But that movie is 1917. Stunning spectacle of a war film. The movie looks like large portions of it are like done in one take. They very cleverly edit things so that it kind of appears that way. Seeing this in a big movie theater, I got the gist of the film. I saw a lot of great things, but I feel like there's so much that I couldn't take in. You know what I mean? Like when you're watching a movie on a giant screen, there's so much going on. You're looking in all these different directions. You can't always see everything at once, depending on where you're sitting. So, Jim, I'm really anxious to fire this up on the 4K projector in our projector room and watch this movie again once it becomes available. Maybe skip through the singing stuff. I didn't really care for that so much, but the rest of it, I'm really excited to see again.
There's only a short bit of singing.
Yeah.
And it's a good song, Wayfaring Stranger. But great pick. There is a lot in this movie. It's, you feel like you've been on a journey when you get to the end of this movie, right? And definitely worth seeing again, I think.
I think there are some things that happen in. Gosh, this is such a spoiler-free way of saying this. there's some things that happen in this movie that make me want to rewatch the beginning of the film, because I think that some of those earlier scenes would definitely be colored by some of the things that I know happen later on.
Yep.
Was that a fair way of saying that? Oh gosh,
so.
I was really.
I think so.
Yeah, we're not spoiling anything, right?
I mean, I don't know. It's going to be hard with some of these not to spoil. Maybe we should have said that at the outset, but if you hear a movie come up and you're like, oh no, I haven't seen it yet, I won't be spoiled, maybe step away for 5 minutes and come on back. But yeah.
Yeah, well, what's interesting about this one is that we had some really, really great picks from our listeners. Several films that they said are going to be on repeat in their own homes. Both Noah Eckert and Kevin Ryan actually selected Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. And I 100% get that predilection because I think Star Wars is like a really good home base for a lot of us, especially those of us from a specific age range. And so I can see revisiting that. And we also have James Castaneda says he's looking forward to revisiting the bone-crunching world of John Wick 3. And yes, I'm right there with you, James. I'm actually kind of, in my mind, I'm thinking about like, I need to have like a John Wick trilogy day where I just go 1, 2, 3. Since those films kind of flow into each other, I think it would be fun to like actually watch them flowing into each other.
John Wick marathon.
Yes.
Marathon sleepover.
Oh my gosh. Can we
cuddle up with my dog?
Can we watch those movies like in our underwear eating ice cream and like just having a good old time?
It sounds great. You talking like during South by or something or whatever?
Why not?
Oh, we'll be dead tired though.
yeah, but
who needs to sleep?
Who needs sleep anyway?
We'll just do it while we're standing in line outside of a theater, guys. It'll be great. We'll be in our underwear eating ice cream, watching John Wick movies on the computer. No one will care.
I'll have my iPad. You can all just cuddle around. Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, guys, thanks.
Players make a scene again.
Thanks so much for writing in with your choices for that category. Moving on to the next. This is going to be biggest tearjerker. This could be a film or a scene from a film that just made you ugly cry like the Dickens, or if you're not prone to crying during a film, maybe it got you close to crying in a way that most movies or scenes do not. Jim, what was your biggest tearjerker?
Mine was a couple scenes from a movie this year that hit me like gut punches. And those are the ones that really get me. And it's from the movie Jojo Rabbit. I'm just going to say this one's going to be hard to do without spoiling shit. I'm just going to say the shoes scene. And people who've seen the movie, I think, will know what I'm talking about. Kind of the shoes in the town square. I just loved, the scene is shocking the way it's filmed and the timing of the scene, the acting by the little kid, and just kind of the shocking nature of it, because this film is a comedy blended with life and death drama. That's the kind of movie it is. And the way the scene is set up in this movie, I think makes this scene work tremendously well. I didn't see it coming. I don't know if anybody else saw it coming, but the way it was set up was great. And then there's a scene at the end. I'll just say it's kind of the picture book reveal where, he's going through the picture book that the girl has drawn throughout the movie that we really didn't get to see to the end. And it just, for some reason, I thought it was just a beautiful way to sum up the story and character motivations very visually, without words, without voiceover, without, a ton of context, because all the context was in the film. Jojo Rabbit has the two scenes this year that really did it for me.
And it seems like you're not alone. Adrian Charlie from Green Screen to Death podcast. Hey, Adrian, great to see you. Says that scene absolutely wrecked him, Jim. So good choice He's headed out to see Les Miserables. Adrian, enjoy.
Adrian and I are brother criers, so we're good.
Yeah, I'll kind of springboard into my pick here because I was actually on the fence with what I was going to choose, and I think I've sort of shifted my thinking kind of while we've been doing the episode. So I'm going to springboard into Jojo Rabbit too. I was between it and The Farewell, and I think the difference between those two films is I think The Farewell has a more like, it's like water drops on a stone type erosion on my soul, whereas Jojo Rabbit has a scene that tears me down and another scene that tears me back up, or builds me back up. And I'm going to select that scene, the scene that built me back up, as my biggest tearjerker, because sometimes for me, it's not the sad stuff that gets me. It's moments of cathartic joy. And there's a moment, and I think, well, let's just talk spoilers, because we can't.
Spoil it.
There's a scene very early in the movie where the Scarlett Johansson character is talking to the kids that are in her house, separately, but and one of the conversations that gets raised is, what's the first thing that you're going to do when this is over? And the answer is, dance. She says, I want to dance. Well, she doesn't make it to the end of the movie, to Jim's point. But there's a moment, the very last scene of the movie, there's a moment where the two kids are outside, and one of them already knew the war was over. One of them didn't, until she looks around and sees like a truck go by and some guys have the American flag and all of that. And as the credits get ready to roll, the two kids just start doing a little goofy dance with each other. And I think that moment was built up to from all of those scenes that came before, the love and the nurturing that came from the Scarlett Johansson character, the trials and tribulations that the two kids had bouncing off of each other and off of this terrible war that brought down to them, and the fact that they got to sort of fulfill that wish there at the end. Like, that's the type of stuff, like when you talk about the stuff that like breaks me, it's that type of stuff, like poignant joy, I guess.
Great one, Will. I didn't mean to sway your pick here.
No,
away from Farewell, which was another really, really great movie. But
yeah, no, both fuck me up in their own ways. But I think that just in terms of like which one had like the biggest outpouring, it probably was Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah, definitely a very poignant scene indeed.
What do you got for us, Brad?
My biggest tearjerker actually comes from a movie meant for kids, believe it or not. This movie wasn't one of my favorite movies of 2019, but this scene, this performance, is probably my biggest tearjerker from last year. And that is when Anna in Frozen 2 sings a little song called The Next Right Thing. I'm going to spoil this movie a little bit. Basically, there's a moment in the film where Anna and Elsa get separated. Anna's used to being there with Elsa, helping Elsa, kind of following in Elsa's wake. And Anna is all by herself, alone in the dark. She's at her lowest moment in life. And for a kid's movie, and a song in particular, to be this serious and address such complicated emotional things kind of blew me away. Not quite Steven Universe level in some ways. Earlier Steven Universe, not the contemporary stuff. But just an example line from this song. The life I knew is over. The lights are out. Hello, darkness. I'm ready to succumb. That's some serious shit for a kid's movie.
That's some dark shit.
That is some dark fucking shit.
Dark shit, Disney.
But I tell you what, like, hearing her say those words and sing this song took me back to every deep, dark, depressive hole I've ever been in, and kind of showed me like a beautiful way to like pull myself out of it in the future and kind of reflect back on the things that I did to get myself out of those holes once upon a time. And when I'm feeling down like that now, I listen to that song, and it's not often that I do, but this song kind of saves me in those moments. Just some other lines from the song. I won't look too far ahead. It's too much for me to take, but break it down to this next breath, this next step, this next choice. It's one that I can make. I'll do the next right thing. And that's just such a fucking poignant way to look at it. Because when you're down and depressed and you look at everything ahead of you and on your plate and it's just overwhelming, like it locks you down, just focusing on like that next little thing you can do. Getting up and like getting off the couch and going outside, or picking up your phone and calling somebody, or, whatever that next right thing is for you, I think is powerful, because if you chain those next right things together, you end up getting out of that hole. So Disney, I want to thank you so much. Kristen Bell, I want to thank you for giving me this phenomenal fucking song that I've probably listened to a million times at this point. I ugly cried like a motherfucker in that movie, and I listened to the song right before the show, and I ugly cried again. You can't see my red eyes, but they are red. So there you go.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've always said sad songs are the best. They always have the biggest impact on me. Maybe I have a dark heart. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But also uplifting songs, or hopeful kind of songs, like the one you just mentioned, Brad, about, just do the one thing, do what you can do. You know what I mean? Right now in the moment. And that's a great message song. And, pair that with a pretty melody, and those things are great. So, and we'll get the tears flowing, I'm sure.
And that's part of why I like the way that we do our awards, and that we're not just awarding like the movie itself. We're awarding, in some cases, moments or performers or scenes or very specific things along those lines. To your point, like if this category had been just the movie that made you cry the most, I could see you maybe like, do I put this? Do I not? But since we were able to distill it down to this one moment, I think that to me, it's more powerful to be able to say, like, this is the moment that, and to me, I liked Frozen 2. I didn't love it, but I liked it. And this moment was definitely one of the reasons why I liked it so much.
Wow.
That low point was a highlight.
Oh, I like that.
The next right thing song. Yeah,
for sure. Big Tom says the Movie Bears podcast is his next right thing, guys.
Oh, Big Tom! Now you're our biggest tearjerker.
Oh, we love
make you cry.
You jerk! You big jerk! Tearjerker jerk!
Well, speaking of listener comments, some listeners let us know what their biggest tearjerkers was, and there seemed to be two moments that resonated with folks a lot. Both co-hosts of the Green Screen of Death, Phil and Adrian, selected "Portrait of a Lady on Fire" as the film that gave them their super ugly cry, while a bunch of other folks, including Jake Carson and Kevin Ryan, were moved to tears, and almost to tears, by, spoiler alert for Avengers Endgame, Tony Stark's funeral. Powerful moments, guys.
Yeah, I love you guys 3000. That's all I could say.
Yeah, such good picks. I love it. I love this category. Is this? I think this is my favorite category.
This is why I go to the movies, to feel things. I've said that for a long time. And whether I feel sad and the tears flow, or like the next category when we get to it, it's like fuck yeah, hell yeah. I mean, that's kind of what we go to the movies for. Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I haven't seen it yet. It must be a Canadian release thing, because both Bill and Adrian live in Canada. So it's either a Canadian release or it's a screener thing that they got to see, because I've been waiting for this movie to be released locally, and it's not here yet.
Comes out February, and it was almost my biggest tearjerker.
I know you got you mentioned it.
You're gonna like it, Jim.
Cool.
All right, gentlemen. Well, we still have a bunch more categories, and we're over halfway through the show. So let's move on to best hell yeah scene. This is a moment in a film that just makes you go, hell yeah, that was awesome. Or that was so great. So let's start with you, Jim. Jim, what made you sit up and go, hell yeah?
I loved the end scene in a movie we already talked about a little bit, Ready or Not. The end of this movie was kind of a great climax to the story, and a little bit unexpected. We're spoiling a little bit here. So basically, this family of assholes is trying to play this murder game against this bride to be, and or newlywed bride, and they lose because they didn't kill her at the end. So when they haven't killed her by sunup, they all spontaneously combust like all over the screen, and everyone's going, "Yeah, that's great." And also, there was a scene before that where like a ghost actually appears, and it actually gave me like I don't get scared in movies, but that scene actually gave me like goosebumps when that happened. So that movie nailed the landing. It stuck the landing as far as I'm concerned, and that end scene of the family combusting, even the little kids. I'm like, yes, blow up the kids.
Jim and child murder
But
go
yeah,
hand in
ready.
hand, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. That's right.
Well, it's a lot like the end of Kingsman
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, in that
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, but it's one of those movies that like builds to a big crescendo and just makes you sit back and say like, are they gonna? Oh shit!
Yeah.
They're doing this.
Yeah.
All right. Solid choice, sweetheart. Will, what about you? What made you go, hell yeah?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's got to be Avengers Endgame, specifically probably the last third of the entire movie, because this was a movie that was built towards hell yeah moments, right? This is the 20th film in in this saga, and all of these story beats had been building up, and so it's hard to pick just one. There's the moment where like you hear on your left, and then just like all the characters show up to come in and save the day. There's the moment where Captain America is able to pick up Thor's hammer and start kicking some ass. There's like a badass scene featuring just a bunch of like great female characters. There's a heroic sacrifice. And every single one of these moments was very sincerely built out of everything that had come before it. And it was like hell yeah moment after hell yeah moment after hell yeah moment. So yeah, for me, this was sort of a slam dunk category. I can't think of another film that really got me just as jazzed up as those scenes did.
Yeah, I mean, that movie was like almost too much of a good thing with all the hell yeah scenes in it. It's like it's hard to pick out maybe just one or two that are great. But the third act, especially, the third act, I thought was great because it kind of brought everything around full circle. But Brad, I know that you like this movie a lot, also.
I did,
and especially some of the
the
scenes.
Infinity Gauntlet behind me that unfortunately no one can see because we don't have live video yet.
I can see it, Brad.
Oh, good. I definitely is a clue that I obviously enjoy these films a lot, and Will, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, it's sort of the crescendo, right, that everything had been building up to. And when everybody basically comes back and they're forming their groups and they're fighting, I mean, that like 20 minutes probably was really high octane movie going right there. So I co-sign your pick there. Good stuff. Well, for me, my biggest hell yeah scene comes from a movie that already came up a little bit earlier. And that film is Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. It is a moment that I waited 38 years of my life to witness. And that was Luke Skywalker finally pulling his X-Wing out of the water. With that same music from The Empire Strikes Back when Yoda pulls the X-Wing out of the water. Man, I was crying during that scene. I was sitting on the edge of my seat in that scene. Just seeing the expression on Mark Hamill's face, like, and obviously, he's like just gesturing like in a green screen room, I'm sure, but he's so completely sold like the power of the Force bringing this thing up, and then there was this like triumphant but like peaceful look on his face that I will never ever forget. Such a powerful moment. And then when Luke catches the lightsaber that Rey throws, and he's like, a Jedi's weapon deserves more respect than that, was my second biggest hell yeah moment.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. So here's the thing about the rise of the X-Wing coming out of the water. Fans of Star Wars have been waiting 7 movies for that to happen. Like, because didn't it happen first in with Yoda in Empire Strikes Back?
Right. Luke basically tells Yoda it's impossible to pull it out of the water, and
Yeah.
Yoda's like, "Hold my earrings, bitch."
Right. And so that happens, and then when they come around to it again in this, it's one of those moments that I guess you could say resonates right throughout the whole not just the trilogy, but the whole saga of Luke Skywalker. So I thought it was really, really cool.
And I think there's something about Star Wars in general where you can pick, I mean, let's face it, probably any of the 9 movies, and even the prequels have these moments. Bear with me on what I'm about to say, where that score is such a part of our DNA and is such a driving part that it helps like elevate these scenes so much, because it's not just the visual cues that you're seeing or the story cues or whatever it is. You've got that amazing score just sort of like catapulting you into the moment.
Yeah. Yep. And it all builds to a crescendo there, and we ate it up. And so did some listeners for a movie we already talked about, Will, when you did your best hell yeah moment. And a lot of listeners agree with you that Endgame had so many write-ins from our listeners for the hell yeah scene. Everything from Captain America stuff to Thor stuff, Iron Man, all in there. There's even a scene, and I don't know if anybody wrote in about this, but the female superhero scene, where they all come together and they're like, yeah, like fucking, we're gonna take these guys down, and they do. And but yeah, Avengers Endgame got a lot this year. That movie was so anticipated by everybody.
It's an interesting comment in chat right now. Hamstruck says, "Say what you will about Attack of the Clones, but when Yoda sparked up his lightsaber, I was screaming."
Yeah.
And
Yep.
Star Wars is even the movies that I think Attack of the Clones is probably low down on my overall list, but there are some great hell yeah moments even in that movie, and that is 100% one of them.
Yeah, and there are there's a lot of, and bear with me here, this is a positive message. There's a lot of fan servicey stuff in a lot of these franchise movies, but when it resonates so strongly as it does, like with Luke and the X-wing, Yoda and his lightsaber, it to me it transcends fan service. It's something different than that. It's more of God, I don't know what category to put it in, but it all I could say is it goes beyond fan service and just kind of hits you in the heart.
It becomes forced service.
Forced fan service?
Not forced fan
that
service.
Sounds worse.
Not
worse
forced
somehow.
fan service. Whatever. It's the Force uniting us all. All right, we still got 5 more categories to go.
Yep, we're gonna fly through.
So we're gonna speed things up a little bit as we work to keep this from being a 4-hour show. Our next topic is the most underrated movie. A movie that we don't know why more people aren't talking about it. Jim, what's your pick?
My pick is called The Last Black Man in San Francisco, which is a movie that I had heard a little bit of buzz about earlier in the year, and I decided to check it out. And man, I was blown away by this movie, especially the performances in this movie. There's an actor in this movie. His name is, I think it's Jonathan Majors. Is that right, Will? He plays a supporting role, and probably the best supporting role, regardless of what the fucking Oscars say. This is probably the best male supporting role of the year. I don't know why more people aren't talking about this movie. It's probably one of the most human, just well-written dramas of the year, and some amazing performances. Looks beautiful. It's beautifully shot. It's called The Last Black Man in San Francisco, guys. It's on Amazon Prime right now. If you got Amazon Prime, no excuse. Get out there and watch this movie. Not many people are talking about it, but you'll be when you watch it.
Which is unfortunate.
It's a great movie.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Brad.
I was just going to say it's unfortunate that more people aren't talking about it. Jim, I didn't start this movie with you, but I came in, I think, like 20 minutes into it, and I was like working at the table. I think it was an off Friday for you, but I was working, and I ended up like watching the movie. For much of that time, I should have been working. Don't
Right.
worry if anyone is listening. I made up the time. I flexed around it, but yeah, really, really solid
Nice
film.
flex.
It's one of those. It's a great film that I think its only crime was having a rollout that didn't support it in terms of like time frame and number of screenings and stuff like that. It came out at a weird time, sort of like got swallowed up. I think it came out kind of close to around the time that like Avengers and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and some bigger films kind of swallowed it whole, which is a shame. It's a great pick.
Mm-hmm. What do you got, Will?
For me, probably not a surprise either. I feel like I've stumped for Fast Color quite a bit on this show, and I'm going to continue stumping for it. It's the best movie that you collect, whoever hasn't seen this year. It is what for everyone that says that they are tired of superhero movies. This is the movie to reinvigorate you, because it's a small personal story about a woman and her family that happens to have like a superhero, not even superhero, but a superpower backdrop to it. Yeah. Beautifully shot, wonderfully acted by Gugu Mbatha-Raw and Lorraine Toussaint, who are just absolutely stellar together. It has some of the best visuals I've seen in a movie this year. It reminds me of like, it's like if, in terms of like sort of its like pacing and its tone and all of that stuff, it's like if Logan wasn't as grimdark as it was, because Logan was pretty grimdark in places, you'd get Fast Color. I implore you, watch this movie. It is so damn good.
Good pick, Will. I'll have to take your word for it because it's still on my have to catch up with movies of 2019 list. But it is on, I noticed it's on also on Amazon Prime Video and also Hulu.
No time like the present.
Oh, all right. And for me, this movie has gotten a lot of critical acclaim, and we've talked about it on the show. But guys, very few people I know have seen this film, and I don't understand why. I don't get it. I'm like, have you seen this movie? And they're like, nope. And I'm like, why? And they're like, eh. And that movie is Marriage Story. I don't get it, guys. Scarlett Johansson, Adam Driver, Kylo Ren. Crazy, amazing film, full of feels. Yes, the movie is not about a happy topic, a divorce, a family crumbling around the crumbling marriage. But man, this movie is just fucking fantastic. And I'm glad it's getting critical praise. But, for friends and family who are maybe listening to the show, this is on Netflix. I mean, you can see this right now. You don't have to pay $60 to go to the movies and buy a bunch of popcorn and see this. You can literally use your Netflix subscription that you likely already have, make a bag of Orville Redenbacher popcorn, put it in 2 bowls, and then argue over who gets to own the bowls after the divorce.
Or your friends log in.
Or your friends log in. That's right. Or maybe your ex-husband's login that you're still using because you got it in the divorce. But yeah, Marriage
That's awesome.
Story.
Yep.
And what's so great about this one is that it's a love story. Even though that it's a story about divorce, it's a story about the love that two people share, and how divorce isn't necessarily the end of the bonds that we have with one another. Sometimes messy, sometimes wonderful, very often in between. Very complex, very adult movie, very moving. And we had some really good picks from our audience as well. Here's a good one from a friend of the show, Hamstruct. Hey, see him. He's popped back here into chat as well. He actually had 2 selections for this category. One of which was the thing that I referenced at the beginning of the podcast, in that it was a film that I didn't even know about and is now 100% on my radar. And that's a movie called Iceman, that when I looked it up, it's a genre film that's sort of like set about a caveman in the Neolithic era. And that looks badass. And the other one that he picked is this movie called Loose, which he also selected as his hottest on-screen moment because of actress Luana Velez. This was a Fantastic Fest movie that I think is on Shudder right now. And so these are two really, well, I haven't seen Iceman, but these are two really interesting picks and probably great picks. I can't vouch for Iceman itself, but Hamstrat can. And I love this category because hopefully it inspires some people to check some new things off the list.
Yeah, Loose is a great pick. Haven't gotten to catch up with Iceman yet, but we watched Loose up at the one of our vacation movies.
We did.
Right?
That was a cabin adventure film. It's not really an adventure film, but you know what I mean. Very, very solid. So good. Well, speaking of solid, we're gonna talk about some movies that maybe were not so solid. These are going to be the worst movies, and this one actually. It didn't make our listener poll. We wanted to be really positive in that poll, but we're over it. So if you're in the chat right now or you're listening on digital tape delay, feel free to comment, on the YouTube video or Facebook or Twitter, wherever. Tell us what your worst movie of 2019 was. But Jim, let's dive into our worst movies. What was your pick?
Well, let's bank some time here. We'll both talk about it at the same time, and then we'll let Will give his.
Spoiler alert! Jeez.
Man, I don't really like to rag on movies, even ones that are bad that I didn't like. And this one is no secret. If you guys listen to the show at all, know that I really despise this movie. This was, and I don't mind tearing down bad movies made by a studio, which, by the way, all of our worst movie picks were made by the same studio. Let's just get that right. And it's a big studio called Disney. Dumbo, the remake that came out this year, is my worst movie of the year. Everything about that movie just rubbed me the wrong way. They took a very beloved, classic, animated story that was barely 70 minutes long or something like that, and they made it a bloated, no pun intended, a bloated, just noisy, just sapped all of the real emotion out of it and made a bad Dumbo movie. I don't know how you do that, but they did it, and I just wish they hadn't. And now I'm a bit soured on Disney remakes going forward. So just so you know.
Yeah, and you alluded to this earlier. This is also my pick for the worst movie of 2019, and I'm kind of like middle of the road when it comes to these Disney remakes. Will, I know you're very impassioned against them. Jim, I know they're not your favorite things, but I've kind of dug some of the things they've done with like Beauty and the Beast and certain parts of Aladdin.
Sleeping Beauty was
Sleeping Beauty. I fucking loved The Lion King, which I thought was amazing. But this movie definitely is off-putting to me as well. I like Tim Burton. I like some Tim Burton isms, but I don't think I like Tim Burton in a Disney movie these days. Dumbo was just, oh man, it was not great. From the precocious little girl, I'm going to be a scientist when I grow up. That's awesome. Be a scientist, but don't be an annoying little jerk face, snot-nosed kid, making everyone think that they're dumb because, you read a book, the little boy, like, man, there's just so many things. Respect to filmmakers, respect to Tim Burton. Tried to do something cool here. It didn't work for me, but I know some folks who took their kids to see Dumbo and they really loved it. You know what I mean? It's an updated story for a new audience. So, I'm trying to put some like positive butter on the moldy bread. But
good luck with that.
That's where
it's a waste of butter.
I come down on worst movie. So, Will, I feel like your film might dovetail into this conversation a little bit, though.
Yeah. So, in terms of Disney remakes, I'm with very much the sentiment that I'm very impassioned against them. Like that was a very good read. And it's mainly because I'm not someone who's opposed to remakes as a whole. I'm just opposed to remakes where I don't feel like anything new is brought to the table. Now, I am excited for Mulan, which is coming out soon, and
so
the trailers look good. This one might be the one to break the curse. But for me, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it for very obvious reasons. But for me, the movie that I disliked the most last year was The Lion King. For me, I felt that it was probably the worst sinner in terms of the, like, let's just copy the template of the original. Like, I don't feel like it really brought anything new. It didn't really invigorate. And any of the scenes where the animals were talking, which is a lot in The Lion King because it's a movie about talking animals, the animals came across as very lifeless, very soulless, and very devoid of personality to me. I didn't like watching it. I didn't like listening it. And I didn't like being in that theater. And I'll leave it there. I don't want to. This is like, it's not fun to do that, you know. So, but opinions are different, and I think that's what's so great about what we do is like we can come down very differently on different films, and like Brad and I aren't like throwing up our dukes afterwards.
Never apologize, Will, for your opinions. Brad, did you write? No, you aren't. In that blog?
I did. Did you see that, Will?
Yeah, I thought Will wrote it. Then I said, no, Brad wrote it.
You got to explain it now because not everybody can see that.
Yeah.
Oh, on the show sheet we put our picks for worst movie, and in Will's column he has The Lion King, and in parentheses he put "I'm sorry," meaning he doesn't like us. I don't really like to shit on movies, especially ones that he knows that maybe other people like. Yeah. And then Brad writes underneath it, "No, you aren't. Sorry." Oh, I think that's cute.
Either way, it does say something about like that all three of us chose like Disney remakes does sort of speak to like the idea that when they don't hit hard.
Yeah.
And from a company that is known for sort of like creative animation, it does feel very weird that all three of us had issues with these remakes of these animated films in different ways.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yep. Very telling. All right. Moving on down the list to our next topic. This is best soundtrack or score. Jim, what was your pick?
For soundtrack, I split it up. I'm sorry. For soundtrack, I liked Rocket Man. I've loved Elton John music for a long time. I thought this movie did a really good job of getting a lot of it in there. Some really good covers. Done well, done respectfully, and fit within the story. So I like the soundtrack a lot for Rocket Man. It just stood out for me. And for score, I put Joker. I love the score in Joker. Scored by a female composer. I forget her name because I think it's like Norwegian or something. If I'm not mistaken, I apologize if I screwed that up. But I thought it was very distinctive, added a lot to the mood of the film, kind of like that ugly, dark, like foreboding score. So those are my picks this year. Soundtrack, Rocket Man. Score, Joker.
Joker's score is just like fucking tonally oppressive, and I mean that in a good way. Like, you talk about like a vehicle for generating your anxiety. Holy shit, that score is amazing at that.
Yeah.
Definitely agree, for sure.
And one that's also pretty likely to get some Oscar love here in a couple of days. Like that score is nominated for an award, and there's been a lot of a groundswell behind it. I get it. I think Hildur Gottensberger, I think is her name, or something like that. And I'm really sorry for butchering it. I think she partnered with the production design on that film very well to make a film and a soundscape that you could almost like. Yeah. Touch, and then when you touched it, you pull away something greasy. Like that's what the score sounds like in a good way.
Slimy yet satisfying.
Was it last year? The score was the what was the Natalie Portman movie?
Jackie?
The Mika Levy. Yeah, Micah Levy did the one for Jackie.
What was the science fiction one? Not Arrival?
Oh, Annihilation.
Yeah. Annihilation.
Yeah.
Oh man. It just like elevated the movie, and put you right in that mood. So great.
All right. Will, how about for you?
Will, what do you got?
Yeah, so it's interesting you mentioned like that little sojourn happened because I almost picked Michael Levy's film from this year, which is Monos. Not very
Mm-hmm.
atmospheric. She's also the one that did Jackie, but I ended up with going with something that I think was a little more like a little more apparent to me, and that was Michael Abel's score for Us. Um, there's a good soundtrack to that, including Lunis's "I Got Five" on it, which you saw in the trailer and stuff. And it's that song has sort of taken on new meaning because of that movie. But I especially want to call out there is a scene towards the end of the movie where Lupita Nyong'o is fighting Lupita Nyong'o, and the score is this like for that scene is this almost like ballet dance style rendition of the "I Got Five on It" song. It's called Pas de Deux. In soundtrack Pas de Deux. And it's such a like I love a score that's able to pull elements together and let them be their own thing, but also transform them into something else. And that's what this score did for me. The score for Us is just so solid, start to finish. It's there's a lot of like good like chorus beats at certain points, like choir vocals, which make a lot of sense on the scenes where like the people are like coming up from underground and like the people that are voiceless are getting their voice. There's moments where it's creepy. There's moments where it feels like it's under the surface and nefarious. And there's times when it gets a little bit more buoyant and bouncy, all of which play so comfortably and beautifully with the themes of the movie. So yeah, the score for Us was it for me.
God, the problem with Us is it came so early in the year. I think a lot of people it's kind of slipped out of people's collective consciousness. But I do remember the soundtrack definitely making an impact and being kind of unique in terms of, how we get soundtracks these days. So, yeah, great
Definitely
pick, Will.
a good choice for sure. For me, my best soundtrack slash score, I went with the soundtrack side of the slash, but honestly, this film had a really good score as well. And Jim, I mean, you already called it out there. It was Rocket Man. I thought Taron Egerton just did an amazing job with these Elton John songs. It's funny, as much as I mean, I do love Elton John. I've seen Elton John perform live. I have a weird relationship with his music. We don't have to get into that. Sorry. But I have listened to the Rocket Man soundtrack a ton since I saw this film, and it's hard for me to like listen to Elton John songs over like sung by Elton John over and over like that. But I don't know. There's a newness to it. There's a new spin on some of these songs, not deviating so much that you're like, holy fuck, what am I listening to? This is nothing like the Elton John song. But I think there's just some really cool new like instrumental motifs and stuff in the score, and the titular song "Rocket Man" is probably my favorite version of that song ever. Now, many people have covered it. Elton, obviously, you get the top spot because it's your song, man. Yeah, really great stuff. So that's my pick. All right.
I was listening to that soundtrack before it was a soundtrack.
Oh, jerk. All right.
I mean,
we got some listener comments. There's probably no bigger champion of the movie Midsummer than Bruce Perky, and it's fitting that he selected Midsummer as his favorite score of 2019. I don't remember if that movie had much in the way of like actual songs, but it had a really oppressive sort of like droning, dreamy score to it that I totally dug. So great choice, Bruce. Absolutely.
Very good.
All right. Moving.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Moving on down the line, we got favorite documentary. These do not ever get enough love, and so we really try hard to spotlight them on this show. So they've got their own award category. Jim, what was your favorite documentary of 2019?
Man, there was so many great documentaries this year. This was an astounding year for documentaries. So much so that I even had this one on my top 10 list of the year. I wanted to put more docs on the list, but it's just so damn hard to get them on there. But Apollo 11 was mine. I just loved. I mean, it's a straightforward documentary. It doesn't do much that's like blows your mind, other than shows you some footage that has like never, footage that was filmed during the Apollo 11 mission with special cameras that were on these ships, the space capsules and stuff, that had never been seen before, have never been released before, and they incorporated into this documentary. The way it was stitched together, it was like it was basically like an adventure, kind of like a 1917 thing where they start at the beginning and they go right through the whole mission. All this stuff is happening, stuff's going wrong that you didn't necessarily hear about. I'm a sucker for like hard science, hard science stuff, whether it be, narrative movies or documentaries anyway. But Apollo 11 was great. Guys, watch it. That's all I got to say.
That was the documentary about the guy who fought against Rocky, right? Apollo?
Yeah, that was the 11th Rocky movie.
Right.
Apollo 11.
Right. That's right.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
good pick.
So it's a documentary about him training in the gym. No, it's not. It's about man's first mission to actually set foot on the moon, the Neil Armstrong mission. So yeah, Apollo 11.
And it arguably has like some of the best cinematography of the year for a documentary, which is...
Yes, it's astounding. Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Will, how about you? What was your best documentary?
Yeah, this was a hard year for it because there were some amazing picks. You mentioned Apollo 11. Bathtubs Over Broadway was one we gushed over towards the beginning of the year. Honeyland, Hail Satan, I think I mentioned last episode. But I think the one that kind of rose to the top for me is a documentary that usually isn't my style in terms of like, the best ones of the year, but this one did something special for me. It's a documentary called For Sama. This is a story about there's this woman, and she is doing the documentary to explain to her daughter, her baby, sort of the decisions that she made and why she made them in relationship to her and her husband and their baby's life in Aleppo in Syria. They stayed behind as sort of like parts of the resistance, and her husband was one of the last doctors that was there, and he had a hospital that he ran and a bunch of people that worked with him. And what resonated to me about this is I've seen a lot of documentaries that were about like, here's what it's like in Syria, here's what it's like to be in a war-torn country, and they range in quality. But what For Sama did for me was it very much personalized it. Everything that was happening outside, there were moments where like the bombings would happen and like where someone like would get rushed in and have to be like resuscitated or saved or tended to their wounds, or they didn't make it. But it's all through the lens of this family of three who you get to realize why they loved staying there so much. You get to see their garden. You get to see on a snowy day the two of them having a snowball fight. There's a moment where the doctors are like, it's sort of in between things, and they've got like markers and they're just kind of like drawing on each other and just joking around, and just like the way you normally would. And I feel like I don't get to see that sort of side of these types of stories very much. So much so that I was so invested in this. I was so moved by these characters. And I was so moved by, there's a scene in this movie where this woman comes in and she's been injured by a bombing and she's pregnant, and it doesn't look like the baby's going to make it. They get the baby out and the baby's not breathing, and it's tragic. And then they work on the baby, and then the baby starts like crying. And you see that a lot of times in like dramatic movies, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But seeing it actually play out with an actual baby that was like on the cusp and it was pulled back by someone who just cared that much, I mean, it broke me. Like, that was almost the biggest tearjerker moment for me. It's For Sama. You can find it on like the streaming platforms. And I think you should absolutely watch it, even if you're sort of tired of like war-torn documentaries. I think this one personalizes it in a way that'll surprise you.
Well, again, this one's been on my list for so long. I'm a lover of documentaries, and I heard a lot of buzz about this one, so I'm definitely going to get to it. I promise. I'll do it for Sama.
Do it for Sama.
Goodness. All right. And to close out this category, my favorite documentary is actually a movie I talked about on the show last week in our top films of 2019, so I'm not going to go super in depth. But Linda Ronstadt, The Sound of My Voice, incredible documentary about an even more incredible person, and all of the phenomenal ups and downs of Linda Ronstadt's career and where she's at now and what's happening with the sound of her voice. I'm actually not going to spoil anything. I know spoilers are okay, but like, I don't know. I think this is a really powerful doc, and I think people should, definitely see it. If you enjoyed Linda Ronstadt's music, it's kind of fascinating to learn all about her life and her rise to stardom and what's happening with her now. So yeah, Linda Ronstadt, The Sound of My Voice.
Yeah. And I know she was preceded by, artists like Janis Joplin and stuff, who was, women pioneers in music. But Linda is definitely one of the women pioneers in music, in rock music, folk rock music especially. Just an amazing voice. And like you said, you get to know the person a little bit here and what drove her. Great stuff.
You could almost call this movie a folk rockumentary.
Folk rockumentary, yes.
And you did. In terms of our audience picks, so the Green Screen of Death Boys, Bill and Adrian, were back in unison again with their pick of The Biggest Little Farm, which was also a front runner for me. Also in the beautiful cinematography category. But another one that I think was deserves some attention is one that Hamstruck reminded us of. He reminded us of Don't Fuck with Cats, which is a docuseries that appeared on Netflix last year. It was absolutely hard to watch, but it was hard to look away from.
Yeah, man. I talked about The Biggest Little Farm on our top 10 show. Great documentary. Almost beat out Apollo 11. I love this little documentary about this family, husband and wife, who start a farm from scratch, and they don't really know a lot about farming, but they learn along the way, and all the setbacks they have and the help that they get, and just kind of the little messages that come out that aren't really, it's not preachy, but it's about like taking care of what we have, on this planet, and just a really great doc. I loved it. The Don't Fuck with Cats one, I've stayed away from it because I don't know if I could really watch movies that like would even show or even intimate like violence against animals. I think I'd have a problem bringing myself to watch it. People be assholes and hurt innocent, defenseless animals. It just it would kill me, I think.
It's hard. You see Next to Nothing. They do a good job of not really showing the stuff, but at the same time, you still know what happened, and your mind is still going to paint the picture and fill in the blank.
Right. Yeah, it's hard. But I've heard a lot of things about this, but I don't know if I'll ever. Unfortunately, I just don't know if I'd ever really get to watch it. But yeah, fuck that guy if anything happened bad with those animals. That's not cool. Not cool.
Agreed.
All right.
Well, gentlemen, I think we need to end the MBP Awards on a high note. No animal cruelty, no sadness here. Our final category
Hope not.
is hottest on-screen moment. Maybe a really hot actor or actress or both that really caught your eye. Maybe a scene in a film that really, flooded your basement, gotcha excited. We had a lot of good, I think, opportunities or options for this category for this year, depending on your taste in men and women. But let's kick things off with Jim. Jim, what was your hottest screen moment of 2019?
Let me see. Mine was the sex scene in the male on male sex scene in Rocket Man, the gay sex scene between Taron Egerton and Richard Madden, who's played Rob Snow in Game of Thrones. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it could have gone even I thought they could have gone a little further. I would have been happy with that. But hey, to put a gay sex scene in a big studio release movie is kind of a big deal. We don't get many of those. We get them in indies, quite a bit. But and neither one of the guys is really my type, but it was still kind of hot to see. This year was kind of weird. There wasn't anything that really kind of made my nether parts like move, but I did stand up and not stand up that way, but I did kind of take notice. I did kind of take notice of the sex scene in Rocket Man. I thought it was good to see. It was pretty hot. Just watching two men, have some fun in bed and the camera not like having to cut away right away. So as soon as they started getting close to each other. So good on Rocket Man for that. Pretty hot scene. I couldn't think of anything hotter in my mind that I saw this year.
And we found out that Elton likes to bottom. So there you go. New Elton John knowledge.
That's right.
Bottom Man.
I'm shocked.
All right. Will, what was your hottest screen moment?
Yeah, so this one's a weird category for me because you guys know I screen for a festival, and I get, and it's, since it's an LGBTQ festival, I get a lot of things coming across my plate, several of which are just like films that have unsimulated sex acts. I had one that came across the other day where there's like just out of nowhere, this isn't acting, it was just a thing that happened. A guy is basically elbow deep in another guy and the other elbow deep in another guy. And I'm just like, whoa, warn me first.
Whoa.
So because of that, I feel like I have a weird relationship with like sex scenes in movies. And so for me, what really instead does it for me is like suggestiveness or like sexual energy. And I think this year, the big sexual energy came from me in the form of sexy dances. There are a couple here that really did the trick for me. I mean, we talked about Hustlers. There was a lot of like sexy pole dancing there. And while that's not my predilection, it still like was incredibly like hot women doing incredibly hot things, and I think that there's a sexuality that comes from that. Climax has a dance sequence at the beginning of the movie that features the men and the women all dancing together, and in addition to it being an incredibly sexually charged dance, there's even a couple of people in there, and I won't say who they are. You can probably guess if you watch
the DJ.
The DJ, yeah, okay, yeah, you pegged me. Who definitely kind of tripped my trigger. But even on top of that, we had a film that came out this year that we all got to see early into 2018. This is called "This One's for the Ladies," a documentary about like male like strippers and dancers. Well, that one got its theatrical release this year in 2019, and it's also about sexy people doing sexy dances. So I think that's what really did it for me, getting that, getting your mojo on, doing moves that I would never in a million years be able to pull off.
That was Brad, I know you didn't see Climax, but I had watched it. I know you were listening to it when I was watching it because you guys commented like, what are you watching? It's because it was all like thump, 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 like the whole, I think like almost the whole movie. And there was some amazing, like really sexy, sensual dances going on. And I do remember now, the DJ really did have my attention. I was hoping that maybe more clothes might come off, but that really didn't happen. But everybody kind of had like tight fitting outfits on and stuff. So there was a lot. Sexiness was oozing off the screen until things started to go crazy in that movie. Yeah. But good pick, Will. Good pick.
All right. Excellent. And I guess it's up to me to close out.
It's up to you, Brad.
This category
close it out
before we get to some listener picks. For me, my hottest on-screen moment actually comes from a movie I wasn't exactly that wild about last year, but this scene was super hot. It featured Jack Rayner, who we saw in Sing Street, who I thought was kind of hot in that movie. He had long hair in that film, though, so that kind of I'm not quite a long hair guy, so that messed with his hotness a little bit for me. But his hair was nice and short and trim and clipped and sharp in Midsummer. And Jack Reynor actually appears fully naked, front and back, in this movie. Jim, you've got the weirdest expression on your face. What is going on?
Oh, I don't know what scene or scenes you're talking about, but I think I know one of them. And we were watching that scene. And we're going, oh my god, like this is happening. Like, should we be turned on? Should we not be turned on?
Yeah.
It's one of those scenes where like, this is kind of bad stuff that's happening, but it's still, I don't know. It was very strange.
Well,
you know.
At one point, he comes running out of a barn, fully naked, with his dick swinging around, and it was pretty hot to see. And there's another scene where he's outside of the barn, where the scary stuff is happening, and you see his ass. It's all sun dappled, which was very nice. And then the scene I think you're thinking about, Jim, is when they're in the barn. And he's like, having sex with a girl while a bunch of old women with like, naked, saggy tits and stuff are hanging out watching him have sex with this girl. And if I focused hard enough, I could like mentally blur them all out. But that's really difficult. So my brain just focuses on the nice outdoor sunny naked scenes of Jack Reynor in Midsummer.
Okay. Yeah. Because there was, I mean, I don't know. I haven't rewatched Midsummer, and it probably does warrant a rewatch. But that scene played very strangely.
Theatrical and not the director's cut. Like, you now have a reason to rewatch it since there's a director's cut.
Right.
Because I don't know. Because that scene was really just besides the sexiness of seeing naked people doing it. There were some power dynamics going on in that scene that were really, really kind of crazy. You know what I mean? Between. I don't know if he was being seduced or what was going on there, but it was seduced for evil scenes, evil intent.
There you go.
Let's just say that. Yeah.
Indeed.
Nice.
And I just put the picture of Jack Raynor's peen.
But
in the chat.
Yeah, but we had other listeners. Bruce Perky, also Will, selected the dance sequences from Climax for this category. You know what? I almost put Climax down, Will, but then I looked at the release of Climax in the U.S. and it said May of 2018. So it had a really slow rollout. I mean, it was one of those. I think it played at a festival or a couple festivals.
It did festivals in 2018, but it wasn't available outside of festivals until it came out in January of 2019.
Yeah. So Bruce says, I mean, seriously, so many sexy women, men, and alternatively identified people in this kind of dance, sweaty mosh pit scene. It was great. And with great music, too, as well, driving it. Of course, we can't forget our bear audience, as Jake Carson reminds us of Nick Frost in Fighting with My Family, a movie that I still have not seen. Please don't tell me he gets naked or half naked in this movie.
Half the movie is just like his bare ass, like in the like.
I'm watching it tonight. Then I'm watching.
Wait, hold on. Let me recalibrate. That doesn't happen. I'm sorry, Jim.
Oh, damn it! Instead, we have to see the Rock's arms or something. I don't know. Whatever. Is the Rock in that one?
Is Fighting with My Family the one where Nick Frost is in like a leather daddy outfit that I saw the picture from?
Yes. I think so.
Oh.
I think so.
He's sort of like a gruff wrestler dad.
Oh, we should watch that. Yeah, I'm on board.
Yeah, we definitely should watch. It's on the list to watch for sure.
All right. Well, Jim, Will, listeners, we did it. We've handed out all of the MBP Awards for 2019.
Yes.
Woohoo! How do you feel, guys?
Congratulations to all the winners. I know you've worked really hard for this.
We didn't even need like Tina Fey or Amy Poehler or Ricky Gervais to do it. Like we did a good job, guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we did, and we covered a lot of movies. We didn't really repeat very much on here, so we kind of spread the love around. We didn't dump it all in one spot. So
more fun that way.
I think.
Yeah, we like to smear it around a little bit.
I think between our top 10 films of 2019, where we had 27 different movies on our lists, last week to this week, we've got like over 40 different movies that have come up across the last two shows. It just signifies for me how great a year 2019 really was for film and amazing performances and amazing frontal nudity with Jack Reynor. I mean, so many good things.
We didn't even make a mistake and give an award out to the wrong movie.
I know.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
That's another reason we're better than the Oscars.
Wait, sorry. Let me rephrase that. Most likely to get a rewatch. Actually, I was going to pick Moonlight. It was Moonlight.
Moonlight.
Oh no! Oh no! Hamstock in the chat says, "Do a live stream for the Oscars, and it'll be like you guys are hosting it this year."
The hardest part about that is if you don't want a live stream of me watching the Oscars because it would mostly be just like me screaming obscenities at the screen. Like last year, it was me, my friend Austin. You guys know Austin. Just with like so much wine, just being sloshed and like catty at the screen.
I'm sure there was a lot of wine happening.
I don't know. We could do a 4-hour live stream.
No way. No way. Maybe we'll riff track some moments from.
How about this? How about we live tweet through the episode? You know, through the show. That might be fun.
Maybe.
Could live tweet during the show.
There you go. Well, just want to say a big thank you to all of our listeners who submitted their picks for the MBP Awards. If you have not yet had a chance to submit your picks, it's not too late. You could totally still send those in, either comment on this video on YouTube, on the post on Facebook. You could tweet it to us. We'd love to hear some of your choices for these different categories. So send them on in. Guys, if people want to chat between now and, next time we get together for a podcast, Hamstock says he's down for a Drunk Bear podcast. That's a thought. We could do an episode drunk one day. I don't think it'll be next week, though, but we could give that a try.
Yeah.
Where can people find and chat with you online? Jim, let's start with you.
Find me on Twitter at JJP Out West. That's my initials plus Out West, all in one word, at JJP Out West. That's where on Twitter is where I talk about movies and movie-related stuff usually. Or you can find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico. Spell it out.
All right. Excellent. And Will, where can folks find you?
Yeah, look for me on Twitter at Whatever Cove. Find me on Facebook, William Lindis. Send me a message first so I know who you are. And then also look for me on letterboxd.com. It's where I review and list movies. Just look for William Lindis there as well.
All right. Excellent. And you can find me on my Safe for Work Twitter at iBradPro or on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. Please just send a message first so I know you're a real person and not a very smart catfishing robot. That would be great. Thank you so much. Guys, Jim, Will, it's been wonderful. This is one of my favorite shows that we do, and I'm so glad we got a chance to sit down and do this. And it was a long show, but a whole lot of fun. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in week after week, month after month, year after year. Soon it'll be decade after decade. We love you all, and we appreciate your support of the show, as always. We'll see you next time, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.